without understanding king and pawn versus king, you're not a chess player. We're going over it right now, and you'll be able to understand the basics right after this video. It's extremely common for a chess game to end with just this: a king and a pawn against this guy, the other king. And if you don't know what to do, especially at the end of the game, you're often going to be in time trouble. You're going to lose a lot of games, lose a lot of elo that you otherwise don't have to. And I synthesize them to make them practical for all chess players to understand the rules behind why these win. Any seasoned chess player knows this position. There are two key principles behind it. If white just goes forward and tries to force a queen, it's not going to work for him. It's not going to work because if we go right here and white pushes his pawn to the 7th rank, he pushes with a check to the king. That's rule number one. If you do this check, it's going to end in a draw. When you get to the 7th rank, when you get to that 7th row right here, you want to be able to push your pawn and that king not be checked. So you can't just push your pawn forward. The reason that's a draw is the king's just going to move over right here. White either has to lose contact with the pawn, in which case there's no material on the board, or he moves over right here. Black has no more moves, and it's a draw. So pushing the pawn forward doesn't work, and it doesn't work because black was able to gain the opposition. And what's the opposition? Well, that's something white's able to gain right now. White moves right over, and he moves right in front of black's king, and he opposes the other king. He's standing right in front. He's covering all these squares. Black cannot move forward to any of those 3 squares. He is in opposition to the other king. It's a physical act. You are stepping in front of the other king. Now it's the other king's move. He has to move. He has to stand aside. And that's what black would do right here. He'd push over. White would move up. And now it's simple. This square's covered, this square's covered, and this square's covered by the white king. So after here, for example, that might be a check. This might be another check, and we'd get a queen into the position. White's easily able to win this. I love Chernev's quote introducing this book. The idea is easy enough, but it must be understood. On this next position, I got the evaluation bar up on the left because it's so easy to go wrong as either player. You might think as white, I've got this square covered, this square covered. It's only one more to go. So let me jump forward, and we see that evaluation. Now it's a draw. Black's able to draw this. Okay, cool. Let me get in front of the pawn. Let me stop this from and now it's again a win for white. And let's break down these past few moves. Well, this last move, we know that if you move up to the 7th rank and it's not a check, you should be able to win the game. Why is that? I push forward. Black has to move. There's only one legal move. In this case, you got to move out of the way. White steps forward, and now he's protecting that queening square. He's going to be able to win this game. So moving up to the 7th rank without a check, that's no bueno for black. And so what does he do instead? Well, I have to move to a place where if he does move to that 7th rank, I am able to get checked. So he would move right here. And usually in such a position like this, white would simply, move forward, escort his pawn to become a queen. Black would have to run away. But in this position, black's stuck in the corner right here. And so pushing this pawn forward, that's another stalemate. And black would be actually able to draw this game. So how does white win a position like this without falling for those stalemate tricks? Well, he first needs to create opposition with his opponent. So he's going to jump forward. Black only has one legal move. He's only allowed to move back there. So he does. And now white moves back over here and black moves over forward. And you're like, wait. But you just told me whoever stood right in front of the other king, they have the opposition. Black just moved over here opposing white's king. So black has the opposition. White has to stand aside. And that's what happens. But our other rule, if you could get to the 7th rank, that's this 7th row right here, and not check the opponent's king, then you're good to go. You're going to win this game. And when the pawn gets all the way up here to the 5th row, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because no matter whose move it is in a position like this where the pawn's on the 5th row, once if, let's just say it's black's move, black moves out of this way, white moves up here like we already saw. Or in this case, it's white's move, so he moves over, black, opposes the white king, steps forward, moves up to the 7th rank. There are no checks. And when black steps aside, white escorts his pawn all the way to the goal line. And I quote, without knowing something of the ending, king and pawn against king, one cannot call oneself a chess player. In the last few examples, I told you opposition is important, but not checking on the 7th rank is trumping that. It's more important. If you could get your pawn all the way to the 5th rank, then you basically have a get out of jail free card. So let me show you how the opposition works normally. In this position, it's white to move. And if it's white to move, black is opposing white's king. So he steps to the side. So black steps to the side and opposes the king. We can repeat moves. We go this way. And eventually, white's going to have to try something different. So maybe he says, okay, I'm going to move my pawn forward. And black just stands in front of the pawn. We move forward again. Black says, okay, I'm just going to stand back. I can just kind of box my way back. It's going to be okay. Your king is not active enough to make anything happen. So white would move forward. Black would oppose the king. And after that gets repeated just a couple of times, every time white moves forward, black opposes that king, then we end up in a draw. Let's go back to a slightly different position. Let's say right now it is white's move. White here, again, black has that opposition, but he has a very, very cool move that he can regain the opposition. And that move is actually moving your pawn up to e4. So he moves his pawn up to e4. Now it says, hey, black, it's your move. My king is opposing your king. And so black, instead of following suit and continuing to oppose white's king, he says, okay, well, I have to step aside. And now white moves forward. He's starting to gain some space. He's starting to gain some squares for his pawn. Black, if he does decide to move forward here, that's not really going to help him. We're going to be able to easily queen that pawn. So instead of that, he says, okay, well, let me kind of reestablish this. And what does white do? White opposes black yet again. Black has to stand aside, and now the entire path is drawn forward. That's the simple beauty of, if you have the opposition, if you're opposing your opponent's king, they have to stand aside, versus if you're on the defensive side and you're opposing white's king, there's nothing for white to do. White can't make any progress. We're pulling from the Russian, Ukrainian, I don't know, school of thought, whichever way you want to look at it. He wrote a ton of chess books, and we are pulling examples from Practical Chess Endgames written in 1961. Now, I've been talking a lot about opposition. The other key thing for these king and pawn endgames is to have an active king. So what does that look like in this position? Well, if white decided to try to just start running his pawn, we see that a bar go right down to nothing. Black's going to be able to jump over here. He's going to be able to oppose white's king, or just pick up this pawn if the pawn decides to keep running. So what does white have to do? White has to get his king into the game, but he should do it in the most active way possible. If he just steps forward right here, black's able to actually gain the opposition, and he's able to gain the distance opposition. So the distance opposition is, we mentioned the king's right here. He's just one square away. The distance opposition, hey, we're on the same color, but we're just one more square away. So he's all the way up here. So let's just say white steps forward, black steps forward, white steps forward, black steps forward. No matter what white does, black's able to maintain opposition as the kings move forward. So what does white have to do? White has to jump over and be as active as he possibly can. He's going to jump over here, and he's going to get in front of his own pawn. So by the time black enters the position, we've already seen this before. We go over here. Black tries to stop it, and white has the opposition. Bring your king forward as much as possible. Try to box out that black king. Keep him out of the position. Do your calculation. Make sure it works, and win those endgames. This position's an excellent example of how even just a couple pawns can be super complicated. White can easily go straight here. Cool, I'm going to move forward. You're going to get out of my way. I'm going to go make a queen. Oh, we're on the edge of the board. We're in a stalemate situation. That's not going to work. Well, yeah, let me kind of reshuffle a little bit. Well, even going right here. Now, White is losing contact with this pawn. There's no way for him to defend it. He's going to have to step out of the way. That's also going to be a draw. So, I mean, what is the winning idea here? We mentioned the pawn on the 5th rank. If you get your king right in front of this pawn on the 5th rank, you're going to win the game because no matter what happens, you're good to go. Let's show that one more time. Let's give up our front pawn. We don't need 2 pawns to win. We only need 1 queen. And in this case, it is black to move. White has the opposition, but even if he didn't, we already saw that no matter whose move it is in a position like this, White's going to be able to take it down. And this is just GG's to black. Nice game for him. In this final bonus position, we are going to look at how hard these endgames are and just all the tricks that can exist in them. Right here, we see White's way closer to queening than black is. And he might think, cool, I'm just going to go, run up the board here. I'm going to escort my pawn. It's going to be great, but it's so easy to go astray. One simple misstep here, and black just easily jumps behind his own pawn and then starts running his pawn, and we trade pawns. GG's, it's just a tie right now. And so how does White combat this? Well, he has to calculate exactly. He has to jump forward. The more active your king is, the more ideas you could possibly have. You might be worried, well, what about this check? Maybe this pawn's going to start running. I'm going to lose this pawn. But due to the geometry of this, it's just very, very beautiful. This check here, the pawn boxes this out. The king boxes this out. This pawn is going all the way to the finish line. And so no matter what happens here, you make that, and you might think, cool, I'm going to win this pawn right here. No, do it the classy way. Bring your king forward. Threaten checkmate. Do it as quickly as possible. Be a professional about it. Or we go all the way back here, and instead the king decides to jump backwards. That's a more critical defense. You can, right here, jump forward. Black's going to have to give up his pawn, but it's not over yet. Don't be greedy. There's one move here that wins. Are you able to see it? I'm sure you are. And it involves that 7th row check. If you grab this pawn, you just lost this game because right here, you're going to move to the 7th rank with the check. You're going to lose. That's a stalemate. I'll just put it on the board here really quick. So you can't grab that pawn right away. So what do? You move your king forward here. And now there's nothing for black to be done. If he moves over here, you grab the pawn. He's going to have to move forward. You're going to move forward without a check. You're going to win. Or even more fun than that, if he tries to run his pawn and distract you, well, this is just going to be a checkmate right here. And for those checking, there's only one correct move right here. You got to promote with a rook. Anytime you could under promote for checkmate, definitely do that. It's way more fun. I'm going to be diving deep on endgames, tactics, calculation. I'm going to be going through this book a bunch. I've got a bunch of other books behind me that are also complicated, and it's going to encourage me to study up more on my chess. I'm just going to bring you guys along for the journey. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. Have a great night. I'll see you around here soon. This book is so old, it's got all the old notation. Move 1, king to queen 3, rook to king knight 5, king to king 3, rook to king rook 5.